Most of the heavy lifting for Alex Anthopoulos is done this offseason. We'll talk about what he's done so far and what is left to be done to fill out the rest of this roster. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Make sure you check out my written work over at BravesToday.com. Make sure you follow the podcast on social media at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. Always enjoy hearing from you, the listener, and how I can make this show even better for you. Had somebody send me an email the other day with some recommendations, and I really appreciate that. I really do want to make this the best podcast for you. So any type of feedback you have, I really do appreciate you sending that my way. If you're new on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Of over 8,500 subscribers on the road to 9K, hopefully 10K by opening day. We'll see if we get a push there from opening day, which, hey, not too far away now that we're into 2024. On today's podcast, we're going to take a look at what's been done already this offseason, what's left to be done. I think the bulk of what Alex Anthopoulos wanted to get done this offseason, he has accomplished. So we'll talk about that. Is it enough? Are you satisfied with what Alex Anthopoulos has done this offseason? We'll get into all of that. I'll try to figure out the money situation and where the Braves stand now, and then hopefully be a little bit of time left to answer some questions from those who are here live. We got a lot of people here with us live already. We got Nate Dogg, George, Jessica, Chuck McMillan, Volt66, Matthew Biddingham, Landon, Nick Harvey, and here David McIntyre, Rich, the Wild One, Fernando, Leland, and here with me live. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you so much for your support of Locked On Braves. Those here live, those watching the replay, thanks so much for being an everydayer here at Locked On Braves. Get into our first segment here, talking about the offseason work done so far. Calendar's turned to 2024. We are about a month and a half away from pitchers and catchers reporting and things really starting to get going. There's still a lot of free agents out there, really good free agents. Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery among those, Cody Bellinger, Teoscar Hernandez on the offensive side. Still some really good free agents available, but I think for the most part, the Braves' work is done at this point. And you look at the needs for the Braves coming into the offseason: bullpen, starting pitching, and left field. Those were the three biggest weaknesses, the areas of need coming into this offseason. And I think Alex Anthopoulos has addressed those. Maybe not the way that you wanted to or were hoping, but I think all three of those areas have been addressed. You look at the bullpen. They brought back Pierce Johnson. They brought back Joe Jimenez, who were good pieces in the bullpen last year. They go out and get an upside arm in Aaron Bummer. Upside in regards that he was coming off a down year, and the metrics seem to point that he's going to get back on track to where he's been in the past. Penn Murphy, somebody that could get at mid-season point, who's had really good numbers at the major league level when he's been healthy. Angel Perdomo, even a guy, not for this year, but maybe next year. Big arm there. Ray Kerr, again, another lefty to help out, maybe not just for this year, but in the years to come. And Jackson Stevens as well, bringing him back for some depth. So been a lot of moves for the bullpen, along with Tyler Matzik, AJ Minter, Raisel Iglesias, already there. So the Braves have formed one of the better bullpens on paper in all of baseball going into the season. Bullpens can change drastically in an instant. You have to keep that in mind. But at the very least, on paper, going into the season, the Braves seem to have a very strong bullpen. Name I omitted from that is Ronaldo Lopez, who they also did sign. All the talk I'm still hearing, even after the Chris Sale trade, and Chris Sale's the other starting pitcher that the Braves acquired, it still seems like they are going to stretch him out as a starter in spring training. And I think that is still the plan. I see Landon asking, is there still a chance that Ronaldo Lopez gets reps as a starter during spring training? Absolutely. I think the Braves are still going to go into spring training, stretching him out, see how it goes, and prepare him for that. I mean, it's nothing wrong with having added depth. even if you just stretch him out to 3 or 4 innings, and have him as a multi-inning reliever, he's not that far away from getting thrust into the rotation if you need him to. So, yes, I think they will still stretch out Ronaldo Lopez for a starting role in spring training. See how things play out. Look, everybody's talking about the fact that this rotation might not have the best durability. So you want to have as many good arms as possible. When the Braves signed him, they talked about stretching him out. It seems like that is still the talk, even after acquiring Chris Sale. So I think Ronaldo Lopez right now, I still put him in the starting pitching category. If it doesn't work out there, I think he's going to be a great addition to the bullpen. But I do think going into spring training, he's at least going to get a look as a starter. And then left field, Jared Kelenic was the answer there. Hopefully is the answer there. Braves spent a lot of money, a lot of maneuvering in order to get him. They certainly are hoping that he's going to be the future in left field. So that is, and as Massabu says, going back to the Lopez conversation, Anthopoulos himself said after the Sale trade that Lopez is still a possible starter. So yes, just to put a cap on that, I think he will get starting reps in spring training. But as far as what Anthopoulos has done this offseason to address the 3 biggest needs, he's taking care of the bullpen, he's taking care of starting pitching, he's taking care of left field. Would love to see him still get another starter, but there is a ton of back-end depth already. We've talked about, Elder right now probably penciled in as your 5th if it's not Lopez. Another thing with that conversation too is that Elder still has minor league options. You stretch out Lopez, he's looking good as a starter. Maybe he begins the year in the rotation. You can still send Elder, the young guys down, let them continue to work on things. And if the Lopez experiment doesn't work out, you can always move him to the bullpen where he's been really good and call up one of the other guys. So that's another kind of thing to keep an eye on there as spring training comes and goes. Would still love to see the Braves get another depth starter. Maybe if you can get a veteran on a $2 million deal or even get somebody on a minor league option, if possible. Would still love to see them add a little bit more depth in the rotation. But again, you got Elder, you got A.J. Smith-Shawver, you got Hurston Waldrop, you got Darius Vines, Alan Winans, Huascari Noah, Ian Anderson coming back in midseason. You got some options there for the back of the rotation if you need some guys to fill some spots. If Sale, Morton, Freed, hopefully not Strider, have to miss some time, you have some guys who can fill in there for a short period of time. You don't want those guys going into the postseason, but they do have some depth there. So what's left to be done? You look at the current roster right now, 24 pitchers, 11 hitters for a 35-man, 40-man roster. So there's 5 spots on the roster right now. David Fletcher, in all likelihood, is going to get added back at some point. But once the season starts, you're also going to have Ian Anderson, Angel Perdomo, and Penn Murphy likely going on the 60-day IL, opening up 3 more roster spots. So you look at it right now, 5 more roster spots. It's actually more like 8. So you got to keep that in mind. It's actually probably more like 7, like I said, with Fletcher going to be added back at some point. You look at the bench right now, and that's where the offseason focus is probably going to be the rest of the way. Forrest Wall right now is a left-handed, speed, backup outfielder. Travis d'Arnaud, your backup catcher, maybe get some reps at DH as well. And then, as I said, Fletcher most likely getting added back to the bench as a utility guy on the infield, can do it all for you. That's your bench at the moment. So likely going to have at least one more guy. I think it's probably going to be a right-handed bat who can play the outfield that the Braves are looking to fill the rest of this offseason. I think you look at the other bench options that the Braves have: Lurie Garcia, Luke Williams, Andrew Velasquez, Phillip Evans, and Luke Weidel. Garcia, Williams, and Evans can all play in the outfield, so that might help them a little bit. I still don't think that's going to be the other bench option. I think you're going to look for a big right-handed bat, off the bench, come in to face a lefty, spell Jared Kelenic every now and then. And that's really the only obvious hole left on this team. I mean, there's really good depth. I just mentioned those guys I just mentioned. I mean, that's solid infield depth. You wouldn't love it if Arcia or Albies or Riley have to miss significant time. You wouldn't love having any of those guys in there, but you could live with it. So you have some solid depth there on the infield. Especially you can, consider Luke Weidel, who I think is a good candidate to maybe get that bench role at some point in 2024. Some good outfield depth, but you need that right-handed bat to come off the bench. I think that's the only real hole left to fill on this roster is who's going to be that right-handed bat off the bench. You got Wall and Acuna who can back up Michael Harris in center field. So whoever you get doesn't have to play center. I mentioned already Evans, Garcia, Williams, Fletcher. They can all play in the outfield. Not that the Braves use their bench a lot, but it would be nice to have a solid bat to face lefties. Or like I said, pinch hit for Kelenic, spell Kelenic here or there. While I would love to see Kelenic just take over, and I hope early in the season he gets at bats against lefties, I want to see him become that everyday guy. But again, you go and look at the playoff run for the Seattle Mariners last year, which is what I've been watching a lot here lately to get some tape on Kelenic. Mariners didn't start him against lefties down the stretch when it meant the most, when it mattered the most. So that right there should tell you a little bit about how they viewed Kelenic facing lefties. So while you want him to be that everyday guy, it might not be the situation. So you're going to need that right-handed outfield bat. You look at some of the options out there, and I wrote about this over at bravestoday.com and mentioned some of those options that they have. I would love Whit Merrifield, and I think I mentioned him on here briefly before because of the versatility, and he's still a pretty decent bat. Old friend Robbie Grossman would be great as well, switch hitter who crushes lefties. Michael A. Taylor, he'd be good to back up center field as well, plays good defense and can hit lefties. Harrison Bader, Randall Grichuk, A.J. Pollock, Kike Hernandez, Tommy Pham. Those are some other free agents that make a lot of sense. Might be too expensive. We're going to talk about payroll here a little bit later, but those would be some really solid free agent options for the Braves for the bench. Trade options would include possibly Reese Snyder from the Red Sox, Austin Slater from the Giants, Taylor Ward from the Angels, Stone Garrett from the Nationals, Ramon Laureano from the A's, Austin Hayes from the Orioles, Brent Rooker from the A's, Edward Olivares from the Royals, Manuel Margot from the Rays, and Connor Joe from the Pirates. Again, depending on their availability, could also be some solid trade options for the bench. Look at the minor league depth or players that you could sign to minor league deals. Chad Pinder, Jordan Luplow have also been with the Braves before and could probably be had on minor league options. Darren Ruff, probably don't want him in the outfield, but he does have good numbers against lefties. Maybe even old friend Guillermo Heredia, who used to platoon a little bit against lefties for the Braves as well and swing those swords mighty well. He could be an option even after having a really good season in the KBO last year. Probably depends for him where he's going to get more playing time and may get more money over there. But would be fun to have the swords back in the dugout, but I don't think that's a likely outcome. But bringing it all back, what is left, what is needed? I do think right now Alex Anthopoulos' main focus is finding a right-handed bench bat who can play some outfield. And I think if there's any somewhat significant move, not money-wise, but any type of move to be made, I think it could be for a right-handed bench bat. Next, I'm going to try and get into the financials the best I can and talk about how much money is left to be spent. Is there any money left to be spent for the Atlanta Braves? Do we really know? That's the big question. We'll try to answer that next. Get in on all the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now. The NFL playoffs are coming up. You got the college football playoff game coming up on Monday. NBA, NHL, all happening right now. And you can get in on the action over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. The app is also easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. They have the MLB futures bets up right now. The Dodgers are the favorite to win the World Series at plus 380, with the Braves behind them at plus 650, despite MLB.com's latest power rankings having the Braves at #1. All of this on paper. So take it for what you will. But over at FanDuel, they have the Dodgers as the World Series favorites in 2024. You can go check that out at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Want to remind you again that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Getting back into our discussion, just looking at some of the comments, Joe DeWild saying anybody but Tommy Pham, great fantasy football player, might not be the best locker room guy. I don't know about that, but Joe calling him a drama queen. Real Teal Cover saying, I do think Grichuk makes a lot of sense. I do too. Crushes lefties. I've liked him for years as that right-handed bench bat, but again, we'll see how much money the Braves have left to spend, as we're going to talk about here. David says, what about Adam Duvall 3.0? Some people might be surprised to know that Adam Duvall has a WRC plus in the 80s against lefties over the last 3 years. So he's not really that platoon bat that you think he is, but could be another solid option, somebody that you get for $5 million or so. All right, let's get into our discussion here on the payroll and what's left, because it is a confusing discussion for sure. And I'll be honest with you, we're going to go through this discussion. I don't know. I do not know right now what the luxury tax threshold is for the Braves, and I don't know that anybody out there other than the Braves really know what their luxury tax threshold number is. You can look at FanGraphs, and they say it's around 272. You look at SpotRack, and they say it's around 250. So a lot, with all the moves that Alex has made this year, taking on money, moving money out, moving players around, it's really hard to guess and to calculate what the CBT number is right now. Best we can come up with is somewhere between 255, 275 million. And that's a pretty wide range, and it makes a big difference in terms of what is left or what can be done, how much they have left to get done. A lot of it is around the Chris Sale trade as well. I think I have a handle on what that looks like, but it's still confusing in terms of the overall luxury tax number. You look at the Chris Sale contract, there's $27.5 million that he's making in 2024. Red Sox are covering $17.5 million of that, or $17 million of that. The Braves are covering $10 million of that in deferred money in 2039 and $500,000 of that for this season. So the way I understand it, the Braves tax hit should be on the deferred money, and that goes by present day value, which is anywhere from 4 to 8 million, or some of the projections that I've seen. SpotRack has it at around 8.5 million. When I look at FanGraphs, it seems to me like they're accounting for the whole 24.1 million tax hit for Chris Sale in 2024, which would make things way off, and it's why that they have the Braves luxury tax at 272 instead of SpotRack, who has it around 250. So a lot of confusion around that and what the Braves hit is actually going to be for Chris Sale. I believe it is going to be somewhere between 5 and 8 million is what the luxury tax hit is going to be for Chris Sale. Even with that, talking with the guys over at Nakahoma Nation, who do a great job, going through all of these contracts and details of it, they have it with Chris Sale's tax hit only being 5.2 million, yet they still have the Braves luxury tax at 275 million because of the 35 million tax hit they're taking for the trades of Kelenic, Fletcher, and Kerr. So again, a lot of moving parts, but putting all of that aside, the Braves either have no money left to spend or they have 15 million left to spend. And that's all dependent on if they want to go over that third luxury tax threshold. And we don't know that. We're all kind of speculating that the Braves don't want to go over that third threshold, which is 277 million, because once you go over that, you pay a much higher tax, 42.5% surcharge on any overages, and your draft pick is moved back 10 spots, which is a big difference, not just in where you pick, but also in your bonus pool money that you get to spend. So it's a pretty big deal. Up until this point, you're just paying taxes, which, even right now, the Braves estimated to pay between 4 and 6 million in taxes on their overages. Not a huge deal, but you go over that third threshold, and now you're messing with your draft, and you're messing with draft picks and players that you can bring in. So it's all dependent on if the Braves are willing to go over that threshold. If they are, then all bets are off. Who knows what the Braves are going to do this offseason, how much they're willing to spend. I believe they probably won't, and that they won't want to go over that threshold. But if they don't, it's hard for me to imagine. So there's a lot of ways I want to go through this. It's hard for me to imagine that Alex Anthopoulos would, not want to go over this threshold and then make this trade for sale, which puts him right up against that threshold. It gives him no wiggle room because Alex wants to save money for in-season moves. It's hard for me to believe that he would make this move and knowingly put himself up against that third threshold unless either one, he's not worried about it, or two, he really is done. And I can't imagine that's the case. Not necessarily that he's done, but the fact that he wouldn't give himself some wiggle room. So I tend to believe that the Braves number that they have for their luxury tax is more in the 250, 260 range. And even if that's the case, they probably still don't do anything else significant this offseason because that's likely the money that the Braves want to save for in-season moves. So a lot to say. I think the Braves are probably done spending big moves this offseason. Of course, you can't ever count Alex out. Something comes up, something falls in his lap. He's going to do whatever he can to make this team better. The one thing you can't do, please stop leaving me comments on YouTube. Don't stop leaving me comments, but Steve, quit with the comments that the Braves are cheap. I get it in almost every episode. The Braves are about to cross the third luxury tax threshold. They're about to have a payroll, including the tax hit they're going to take, that could be pushing them to 250, 260 million, which would have them as either the third or fourth highest payroll in baseball last year, behind only the New York teams and possibly San Diego, depending on where obviously they land. This is not a cheap team. They are spending big, big money. Give props to Alex Anthopoulos and what he is doing and the money that he is spending. He's going all in. He is making these moves. Now he's trying to be strategic about it, and he's not going out and giving up $300 million contracts for pitchers that haven't ever pitched in the major leagues before. But still, he is spending money. You cannot tell me anymore this is a cheap team. This is a cheap front office. That's just false. That is not true with the way that they are spending money right now and where they currently are, not just with the payroll, but with the luxury tax as well. Now, they have a chance to get out from under this luxury tax hit next year. We've discussed that. So I wouldn't be surprised if next year they get under it, because that third year is when the penalties really go up. But this is not a cheap team. They are spending a lot of money to try to put a contender together. And I think that's absolutely what he is doing. And I even see people now just joking about the fact who could call this team cheap. I don't know, but I get it in the comment section after every video that this team is cheap. And I'm telling you, you can go look at this stuff's out here on the internet. They are not cheap. They are spending money like we've never seen before. They're right now already a top 5 payroll, which they've said they want to be. This team is spending a lot of money. They're putting a good team on the field. And this team right now, this roster that the Braves have, is considered by most people to be the best team on paper going into the season. What more could you ask for as a fan? I cannot wait to watch this team play. All right, next we got little news to talk about. Not much, as things have been quiet here after the new year. Then hopefully get to some of the questions from those who are here live. We'll get to all of that here next. All right, again, I want to tell you about our new channel that Locked On has launched, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, not a lot of news to talk about on the baseball front. The Padres have a 2-year, $4.5 million deal with Korean reliever Woo Suk Go. Don't know much about him. Interesting name there. Haven't heard that one before, but Padres making some moves there. Also, Tucker Barnhart was signed over the weekend or earlier in the week by the Arizona Diamondbacks on a minor league deal. So there goes some minor league catchers deals going off the board, and that's pretty much it. As things are really quiet, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery still waiting to have their find out who their team is going to be. So a lot of moves out there still to be made. I see Nick C asking about Wander Franco. Apparently investigations there are starting to pick up a little bit as well. Jeff Passon saying, referencing a story by Alden Gonzalez saying allegations that Tampa Bay shortstop Wander Franco paid off the mother of an underage girl with whom Franco had a relationship. So again, don't want to get into that just because of the nature of the story, but does not look good for Wander Franco, and just a terrible situation there. So that has also been in the news here lately. So worth mentioning, but again, don't really want to get into all of that. All right, getting to some of the questions here in the comment section. Just really quickly, Nick Harvey says, I'm just not a believer in Elder. How long before the fifth spot is locked up by AJ Smith-Shawver or Waldrop? First of all, I'm a believer in Bryce Elder as a fourth and fifth starter, always have been. I think he's going to be very good. I am not really concerned at all about Bryce Elder and his ability to hold a back end of the rotation spot. I think he's going to be able to do that. The pitch mix that he has to be precise with it, but I think he's shown that he can be. I think it was a 22 stretch start that he had of going at least 5 innings. I mean, that's a long sample size. That's not just accident. You look at he made 30 starts last year. 8 of them were bad starts. I mean, this guy can be a really good pitcher. I don't think he's an all-star. I don't even think he's a number 3. I think he's a solid 4th or 5th starter. Do I think AJ Smith-Shawver and Waldrop will be better and eventually replace him in the rotation? Yeah. And I've got on record, I don't know if you want to call it a bold prediction or not, I think Waldrop is going to be the one to supplant himself in the rotation. I don't know that it'll be to start the year, although I would not put it past the Braves if he comes into spring training and just lights the world up on fire and the Braves go with him. It would not surprise me at all. And I think Waldrop has that kind of stuff. I mean, the guy pretty much has 4+ pitches that he can throw. It's just, can he command all of them? The splitter, I talked about it on the Minors Monday when I broke down Waldrop. I think he has really good feel for that, and it's just a disgusting pitch that is almost unhittable. And the key for him is, can he throw it for strikes? Because you're not just going to get chases at the higher levels. And when I went back and watched him, I saw that he was able to do that the majority of the time. So I like Waldrop. I think he has the best chance of sticking in a rotation. I just think he's a little bit more polished than AJ Smith-Shawver at this point. Braves had to push AJ Smith-Shawver a little bit last year just because of need, but I think Waldrop is a little bit more of the polished pitcher right now. So I do think that he breaks into the rotation, but I have no worries about Bryce Elder being a solid back of the rotation starter. Landon says, what is your favorite move this offseason so far from the Braves, big or small? I think it probably is the Chris Sale trade. And that may be a little hypocritical, because if you've heard me talk about Vaughn Grissom on here before, I've said I hope the Braves don't trade him unless it's for a starter that they can control. Now, I never thought the Braves could get anything more than a back of the rotation guy for Vaughn Grissom, but I thought maybe a trade for a JP Sears, somebody like that you can have years of control of, stick him in the back of your rotation, something like that. But they were able to trade him for somebody who, again, I think if you look at the metrics for Chris Sale from last year, still somebody who at the very least can be a number 3 starter, a 3.6 ERA type of guy, I believe was his xERA last year. He's got really good potential. And you do possibly have control over him for another season in 2025 for $20 million if he's good. So, but you give up Grissom, somebody you weren't going to use, somebody that had no spot on your team. You get Chris Sale for $10 million, not just $10 million, but $10 million deferred. And it's somebody that I think has frontline rotation upside still in him. Obviously got to stay healthy, but I think I like that move the most just because of the fact it's $10 million for Chris Sale. And I know he's a 35-year-old banged up version of Chris Sale, but again, go look at the metrics. Don't just look at the standard numbers. Don't look at the fact that he hasn't pitched a lot over the last several years. When he was healthy and on the mound last year, still had really good stuff, a nearly 30% strikeout rate. So that's probably my favorite one. I like the move for Jared Kelenic, but I almost think that's a little bit riskier than the move for Chris Sale. Rodney says, what do you think about Seattle shortstop troubles? I don't know much about that or the troubles that they're having out there in Seattle. So I'm sorry I missed that one. Looking more at the comment section real quick, see if we got one more in here. Chris Kaysen saying Chris Sale is a great pickup, cheap overall. I'd certainly do agree with that. Appreciate the support, Chris and Jeffrey, trying to get the likes up here. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate all the support that you give me here at Locked On Braves. The Braves 2010 saying, are we predicting a possible 50-50 season for Ronald? So great question here, possibly to wrap things up. Yeah, why not? I would not put anything past Ronald Acuna Jr. I mean, 50-50 is a lot, but you go back and look at what happened from that Dodgers series on last year, where I thought there's no way he's getting to 40 home runs. And I think you saw a concerted effort from him to get more lift on the baseball. And if he does that, for a full season, why can't he not hit 50 home runs? And, the 50 stolen bases, especially with the new rules, which have helped, that seems like it's within grasp, but he's got to get on first base. If he's hitting all those home runs, it's going to take away some stolen base opportunities. But again, you're talking about a guy, a couple of things from last year that I really love to see. I love to see him just dropping the barrel on the bat, shooting the ball the other way for just some easy singles. You love seeing, obviously, the walks he's going to take, but cutting down on that strikeout rate. And so you're going to see Ronald get on base. He's going to have those opportunities to steal the bags. And then again, if he stays with that same approach he had the last month of last year, where he knew he needed those home runs. And again, I feel like he just made an adjustment there to try to consciously get more lift on the baseball. But he went on a hot streak for home runs, had to have it, had to have 10 in that final month and got it. So yeah, I would not put anything past Ronald Acuna Jr. He is, the best player in baseball. He is a lot of fun. And I certainly wouldn't put 50-50 past him. Jeffrey Humphrey saying 50-75. Sky's the limit for Ronald Acuna Jr. So excited to watch him this upcoming season. All right, thank you so much for tuning in, whether live, watching the replay. Thank you for your support here of Locked On Braves. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button wherever you listen to our podcast as well. If you would give me a 5-star review, I'd appreciate it a lot. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. But that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves, and we will talk to you next time.